Hi everyone, welcome to Sunya IAS. I hope I'm audible and visible to you. So in today's class, we will discuss something about Mahatma Gandhi and how he started his journey in India. But before he came to India, he started his experiments with truths in South Africa, which we will discuss. But before we come to the Mahatma Gandhi and his arrival to India, we need to understand the background of India itself. We need to know what kind of policies were there in India and in which scenario Mahatma Gandhi entered. Okay, so we need to discuss a very important reform, a Government of India Act, Montagu Chelmsford Reform, and this is a very important one. Why? Because see, you'll get a lot of questions from this area. However, main features are important, drawbacks are important. So we'll discuss how executive was divided and what kinds of powers were there with the legislature also. Okay, so I hope guys I'm live. It's working fine from your side. In case there is any issue, you can comment down below. Please let me know. If you have any doubts from the last class, we can discuss that also. Okay, let me know if you have anything to discuss. Yes, good evening, Viresh, Shudeep, and everyone. Please like and share the video. You need to support the channel, you need to subscribe it, and be on time. Okay, we are live daily from 8 to 10 p.m. Right? So, this is the time when I want you all to come live and interact with me. Now, let's start with the topic. So, as you know, we have covered till the part of the end of the home rule leagues, right? How it got scattered, how it got faded out in India. So, home rule leagues of Tilak and Annie Besant is done. Now, let's come to the Montagu Chelmsford reform, which was a kind of extended version or a brief version, you can say, not extended, but a brief version of home rule league only. Only problem is that now they have understood and acknowledged the demand of self rule or Swaraj in India, but still Britishers didn't give any timeline, any time frame, or any deadline. Okay, so again they left us confused. Fine. So let's understand that confusion. Montagu Chelmsford Reform and the Government of India Act of 1919. This is the topic from where we need to start. Why? See, 1919 is a very important date as it is a date of the real true mass movement of India. When the true mass nationalism or mass movement started. Why it is true? Because see, this time in real sense, you'll see the ground reality will be different. Many of the people coming from different sections of the society will join the movements, they will participate in a huge gathering, and they will participate and contribute at a very higher scale. That's why it is in a true sense this time. Now, the British government, which was not prepared to part with or even share its power with the Indians, they had a clear intention that they don't want Indians to have any kind of self rule. They only acknowledged the demand, but they were not ready to fulfill this demand. They again resorted to the policy of carrot and stick. What does it mean? Carrot and stick is you just try to lure someone by giving them any kind of greed and just showing that you'll get this, but after showing something you use the stick from behind, and it is something like breaking the trust, not keeping the promises. Okay, so what is carrot and what is stick here? The carrot was represented by insubstantial Montagu Chelmsford reform. Why it is insubstantial? Because there was no deadline, there was no time frame for the Swaraj, for the self rule. Okay, so the demand was not completely addressed. It was partially addressed, but not completely. And it was of no use for Indians. Indian participation increased, but still gave no importance or no power to Indians. Okay, that's why it was insubstantial. So this is the carrot. While measures such as Rowlatt Act represented stick. Why? Because Rowlatt Act empowered police officers to imprison or, arrest anyone without any trial, without any warrant issued. And in this scenario, you can say that fundamental rights were greatly curbed due to the Rowlatt Act. And when the Rowlatt Act was passed, Gandhiji and so many other leaders, they started protesting in India. And in that particular scenario only, we will see the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Okay, when we will see that Satyapal and Saifuddin Kichlu, these two important local leaders of Punjab, they were arrested and nobody knew where they were. And that's why people gathered in the Jallianwala Bagh in the garden just to protest. But they got mixed with the general crowd and General Dyer started firing without any notice. Okay, we'll discuss that, we'll come to it. But before we come to it, understand that there were many other acts like Rowlatt Act which tried to curb the fundamental rights of the Indians. Okay, they wanted to arrest Indians, they wanted to put charge of sedition, they wanted to show that these people are anti-government, and if there is anything objectionable against the Britishers, then Britishers could create a big hurdle or obstacle in that organization or in front of the person or leader. They wanted to arrest all the Congress leaders, especially extremist leaders, and that's why they just started issuing these kind of laws and acts. Okay, now they are empowering police and the government, and they are taking away the rights of the individuals by Rowlatt Acts. Fine. So, when the government policies came in the Montagu Chelmsford reform, before that reform, before the act came, the statement was announced, Montagu's statement of August 1917, when they acknowledged the real understanding of Home Rule League, and the government announced further constitutional reforms in July 1918. So, this is known as Montagu Chelmsford reform or Montford reform. Okay, now let's understand what are the basic features, how it is different from the last previous acts. Okay, first of all, provincial government, introduction of diarchy, rule of two. Okay, there are going to be two lists and two houses. Okay, diarchy. So the act introduced diarchy for the executive at the level of provincial government. What does it mean? Understand it with a simple example. Okay, if you know the polity, then you will understand this very well. Just understand that at center, in the union level, we have PM, Prime Minister. He is the executive holder, right? He will have all the executive powers. But the real head is President. President is the head of the state, but will not have many of the powers, right? Only advisory powers are there, veto rights are there, but that too at a very limited scale. Executive powers are there with the Prime Minister of India at the center level. So here, President with the Parliament, President is a part of Parliament. He or she is not a member of any of the house of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, but is still a part of Parliament because nothing is possible without the signature of President. So we have Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. This is known as bicameral legislation. So here we have two houses, right? We have two houses, lower house and upper house. Then PM is going to be there holding the entire council of ministers and the office and having the executive powers. We have executives like IS officers and other officers are there with us, but they are not having that kind of power or the hold as a political head. They are just trained to have a permanent department in their control. Now PM with the council of minister is the real ruler, right? Will make the policies and will execute everything. Now this is at the union level, but if we talk about the state level, in the states also, in few of these states, we have bicameral legislation where we have legislative council and legislative assembly, right? Legislative council and legislative assembly. So legislative council is very much like Rajya Sabha. Legislative assembly, where we have MLA, is like Lok Sabha, right? You have member of legislative assembly, MLA. Okay, MLA, they participate in the election of Rajya Sabha members and they vote for the Rajya Sabha members. Here in the legislative council, in few of these states wherever we have bicameral legislation, we have MLC, member of legislative council, right? You understand this? Now, in the local level, we have Sarpanch, right? Sarpanch is again elected head of a village. But don't go to the local level right now. Just understand, when we talk about provinces, when we discuss the Montagu-Chelmsford reform, their provinces mean state. Okay, province. Okay, union or center. Center means the union. Okay, so provincial government, executives of provincial government, like here we have CM, right? Very much equivalent to the power having PM in the central level, and CM is at the state level. Similarly, here you need to understand the provincial government will have diarchy, and the provincial government means the state governments. Okay, at their level, the act introduced diarchy for the executives. Okay, for the executives at the level of provincial government. Here we are talking about executives. When we say executives, try to equalize it with the chief minister, CM of a state, okay, having the executive powers. Now, executive diarchy, rule of two. So we have executive councillors here and popular ministers, okay, means MLC and MLA, right? MLC, MLA, member of legislative council, member of legislative assembly. Are you getting it? Member of legislative council, member of legislative assembly. It was introduced. So it is very similar to today's MLCs and MLA. Not completely same. Okay, this is just for an example, just to make you understand things, so that you try to get the things in the political sense, how the polity was divided. So it was introduced. Now, the governor, which is very much equivalent to president at the state level, was to be the executive head. Like we have president as the executive head in the union level, but in the state level we have governor, right? But chief minister will have more powers. Chief minister will have the real powers. Governor was to be the executive head only in the provinces. Now, the governor is like a acting person, acting agent of central government in the state level. Here also governor had many powers in few of the subjects. Now subjects were divided: transferred subjects and reserved subjects. Transferred and reserved. Understand? So subjects were divided into two lists: reserved. Now just understand at a common sense, okay, logically, when we say reserved, okay, this seat is reserved. Reserved means what? Something very important, okay, which is important, which is having more value, that would be reserved. So reserved, which included subjects like law and order, very important, finance, land revenue, which is the biggest source of revenue for the government, irrigation, okay, etc. So most important topics by the at a state level where the provincial government could function will be in the reserved list, okay. And transferred subjects means general subjects, general education, health, local government, industry, agriculture, excise, duty, taxes, few of the local taxes. Now you understand that reserved subjects are more important, are more in the value. So reserved subjects were to be administered by the governor. Okay, why? See, governor is equivalent to the president, right? President is there at the central level, governor in the provincial level. So governor is the head. So at that time, when governors were like head of the provinces with their own executive councils of bureaucrats, he could administer the reserved subjects. So the governor will have the real powers, and the transferred subjects were to be administered by the ministers nominated from among the elected members of legislative council. Means there were many leaders. Just give me a just give me a moment, guys. Okay, so now let's come to the third point. The ministers were to be responsible to the legislature. It is very much similar to today's ministries. They need to resign in case a no confidence motion is passed. Similarly, at that time, the ministers were to be responsible to what? To the legislature, and had to resign if a no confidence motion was passed against them in the legislature. So if the legislatures, they decide that okay, this ministry is not working and they are not fine according to the constitution or the law, then they could always pass this motion. But here you understand a point that executive councillors, they were not answerable. Executive councillors were not to be responsible to the legislature, as they used to work with the governor. So you can say that governor was not responsible at all to the legislatures, and these executive councillors who had the reserved subjects with them, they were not to be responsible to the legislature. They used to work in a very independent way. Okay, the fourth point says that in case of the failure of constitutional machinery in the province, the governor could take over the administration of the transferred subjects also. It is very much similar to the president rule, or the state emergency, you can say. So here the governor can take the charge of the transferred subjects also. It means that those things which are there with the ministers, or with their departments, that can also come with the governor's hand. The Secretary of State for India and the Governor General could interfere in respect of the reserved subjects, while in respect of the transferred subjects, the scope for their interference was restricted. It was limited, but you see that it is not completely restricted, because here we can see that in the fourth point, it is provided that in case of there is a failure of constitutional machinery in the provinces, the governor could take over the administration. Now, if we talk about the legislatures, we are talking about the state level right now. Okay, we are talking about the state part, provincial level. So, in the provincial legislative council, which is like MLC today, they were further expanded. Okay, more members came here, and 70% members were to be elected. If it is elected, then it means that it will be more democratic. Okay, a choice is given to people. The system of communal and class electorates was further consolidated, because here also it applied. Women were given the right to vote, which is a very important feature of the Montagu-Chelmsford reform. The legislative councils could initiate legislations, but the governor's assent was required every time to each and every law to be passed. The governor could veto the bills and issue ordinances also, and it is still valid in today's parliamentary system. You see, the legislative councils could reject the budget, but the governor could restore it if necessary. So legislative councils, they could reject the budget, but they were having only limited powers. The legislatures enjoyed freedom of speech, but you see that they are very much having a power under the governor's control. Now you understood the power of the legislative council and the power of the governor's executive council at the provincial level. So what we understood, the conclusion is that governor was very powerful, and he had all the reserved subjects in which most of the important taxes, finances, laws, orders were there. Okay, but general subjects like education, local government, health, and general things were still kept under the transferred list only. Now let's come to the central government. It was still without the responsible government, means there was no scenario of no confidence motion. No, nothing was like that. No responsible government was envisaged in the act for the government at the all India level. So if we talk about the executives here, the Governor General of India, he was the chief executive authority. It means that he is like the president. And there were two lists for the administration, central and the provincial list, which is very much similar to the union and state list which we follow today in India. So in the Viceroy's Executive Council, or Governor General later became Viceroy, so in the Viceroy's Executive Council, 8 members were there. So of 8, 3 were to be Indians. So Indians got more participation. The Governor General retained full control over the reserved subjects in the provinces. Means if we talk about the reserved subjects at the provincial level, the Governor General had full control. Okay, and the Governor General could restore cuts in grants. In case there is any cut, then he can restore it. He can certify the bills rejected by the central legislature and can issue the ordinance also. So Governor General and his executive council was very strong. They could even practice something which was against other ministers also sometimes. A bicameral arrangement was there, means two houses were there when we talk about the legislature. Okay, it is very much similar to the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So at that time, the lower house, means Lok Sabha, or the central legislative assembly, where Lok Sabha members were there at that time. I'm saying Lok Sabha, why? Just to make you relate things in your mind. So central legislative assembly, similar to Lok Sabha, at that time had 145 members. Okay, 41 nominated, 104 elected. So when 104 are elected, you know that there was 1 point added in the election, which is separate electorate. It means that out of 104, 50% general. Okay, 50%, 52 general. It is exactly 50% of the elected seats. Now, if we talk about other part of the 50%, 30% went to Muslims, 2% to Sikhs, and 20 special categories were there. If we talk about the upper house or council of state, it would have 60 members. Okay, it would have 60 members. Okay, of which 26 were to be nominated. Legislative council means what? It is Rajya Sabha, Council of State, Rajya Sabha. In Rajya Sabha, 60 members, of which 26 were to be nominated and 34 elected. And if we talk about elected seats, 20 general, 10 Muslims, 3 European, 1 Sikh, as per the figures given by Subhash Kashyap. So these numbers were there. Here you can understand that it is very similar to Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha today, but this kind of separate electorate is not functioning anymore in India. But at that time, they used to follow it. The Council of State had a tenure of 5 years and had only male members. Please understand, they had only male members. Council of States means Rajya Sabha only had male members, while the Central Legislative Assembly had a tenure of 3 years. Okay, 3 years. Lok Sabha at that time had a tenure of only 3 years. The legislatures could ask questions and supplementaries, ask extra things. They could pass adjournment motions and they could vote a part of the budget, not the entire budget. Okay, but 75% of the budget was still not votable. So it means that those legislatures, even after getting a high level of election and a level of democratic dominance, were of no use for us, because legislatures were powerless. Okay, they had no power, they had only limited rights, they only could ask questions, they were only in an advisory nature, they could only pass the adjournment motions, but the 75% of the budget was still not votable for them. That's why a lot of drawbacks were there. If we talk about the drawbacks, first of all, the franchisee was very limited. The electorate was extended to some 1.5 million for the central legislature. So, if we talk about the central government, you can say that 1.5 million people could only participate here, because the population of India was a big population, 260 million as per one estimate. But you can see, out of 260 million people, only 1.5 million could vote. So this is very, very confusing. It means that many people who had no influence or power in the society, they had no big name or fame, they were not really considered. At the center, the legislature had no control over the viceroy and his executive council. So you can say that legislatures had not at all any kind of power at the center. But in the provincial level, we knew that they could pass the no confidence motion when we talk about the provincial government. So at the provinces, they still had a power of no confidence motion being passed against the ministers in case they don't follow the constitution well. But at this point of central government, there was nothing like that. Division of subject was not satisfactory at the center also. Allocation of seats for the central legislature to the provinces was based on importance of the provinces. For instance, Punjab's military importance was very high. Bombay's commercial importance was very high. So in these provinces, we could see that, allocation of seats were higher. So it is like very much a kind of a discrimination. If we see that at a political level, all the states or the provinces did not get equal representation. At the level of provinces, the division of subjects and the parallel administration of two parts was irrational and hence unworkable. Okay, so it was not logical at all, it was not something functional. Okay, so at the level of provinces, division of subjects and the parallel administration of two parts was irrational, hence unworkable. If we talk about subjects like irrigation, finance, police, press, justice, they were reserved. It means that the governor could only decide about it. Fine, which is very much irrational. Fine, please read this point carefully. Take 1 minute and read it. Okay, try to understand it. Okay, so I hope you read it nicely and clearly. Now come to the sixth point. The provincial ministers had no control over finances, okay, and over the bureaucrats. This would lead to a constant friction between the two. The bureaucrats would not be aligned better. Ministers were often not consulted on important matters too. In fact, they could be overruled by the governor on any matter that the letter considered special. Okay, so this is something which shows that an overruling could always be there in the situation. So many problems and so many frictions and loss of controls were there. Okay, so ministers were of no use. They were not consulted for the important matters. Important matters were already reserved with the governor. So Congress never liked the Montfort reform. Congress met in a special session, and they had a session in August 1918 at Bombay under Hassan Imam's presidency. Hassan Imam's presidency. Okay, and they declared the reforms to be disappointing, unsatisfactory, and they demanded self government instead. The Montfort reform were termed unworthy and disappointing, a sunless down by Tilak. So they may ask you in prelims, sometimes that they frame questions like this, that who gave this statement and why. So why it was a sunless dawn? Because it was having no light, no use at all. Okay, so Tilak gave this statement unworthy and disappointing, a sunless dawn. Even as any Besant found them unworthy of England to offer and India to accept. Okay, so it was very, very unworthy. They were saying that this is something, how could you say so? How could you just give it and present it in front of Indians? It was something which was unworthy of England to offer and India to accept. This is having no use, right? So, this is the scenario here, that Congress is unhappy, people are upset, government is not giving any kind of, uh, you know, judgment or a decision or a statement for self government, self rule. And there, the arrival of Gandhiji happens in India. So, let's understand the making of Gandhi first. Okay, if we talk about his early career and experiments with truth in South Africa, you will realize that he only used his tried and tested formulas in India. He already had a good kind of clarity that how people and how the mindset works. The best part is that he knew the law. Okay, he was a lawyer. He knew that how the law should be used. So if you understand the entire story and the drama here, the reality is that Britishers, they just came with a culture of writing and preserving each and every document. They had a very formal understanding of doing everything. They used to follow formal ways and formalities every time. If it is written, then only considered to be said. If it is not written, then there is no value of verbal communications and promises for them. So, Britishers made it clear that a very important point and each and every step is paperwork. Paperwork should be fine. File should be maintained. Very clear data, very clear interpretation. A value for paperwork was given by the Britishers, and a value of law and constitution. That law and order is very important. Government is having the control on you, so government can always arrest you, imprison you if you break the law. So don't do anything against the law. Don't go against the law. Follow the law. Follow your paperwork and get things done. Gandhiji understood this drama. So Gandhiji, after understanding law, after studying it very well in England, he decided to follow these two rules. First, he was always clear and ready with his paperwork. Okay, no challenges in the documents. Second, he never used to break the law. Okay, sometimes he used to give the passive resistance and show that I don't like the government and the policies like this, but it was in a very lawful manner. Okay, not in an extra constitutional way. It was a kind of a peaceful protest every time. So he was very non-violent, he was very strategic, and he was very smart. He was playing it very smart and slow. Very important, smart and slow. So he knew that if I'll not break the law, simply, if I don't break the law, government cannot arrest me. Even if they arrest me, they won't, punish me in a harsh way, because I will be non-violent every time. If they will ask me for anything, if I have any demands, I'll follow the paperwork. I'll submit the petition. I'll have a file. I'll, follow up on the same. So he followed this drama in a very well way, which was not being followed by any other leaders in India. Majorly. Okay, majorly. Few of the exceptions are there, but majority of them never understood these 2 points of dramas. Gandhiji understood it. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Gandhiji. He was born on 2nd October 1869 in Porbandar, Gujarat. It was, and it is in the princely state of Kathiawar in Gujarat. At that time, it was a princely state. His father was a diwan. It shows that he came from a well sound family. Okay, as we can see that he went to England for his studies. So it shows that he was not coming from a poor family. One more point which you need to understand here is sometimes you can relate it. If you talk about Vardhaman Mahavir, Gautam Buddha, Vivekananda, Gandhiji, and so many other leaders, you'll see that these superior leaders, they had a family or a life or a background where they had never, faced a kind of a survival crisis. Because when people, if they come from a poor background or a poor backward background, they have always, a survival crisis in their mind. Many of the people coming from the poor section or a lower section of society, they just survive and they just try to meet their ends to get the basic needs. So they are always, in that particular dilemma to eat or earn or to fight or protest. Okay. But if we talk about the middle class, they have a more eager tendency to fight and follow few steps and get some respect and power authority. So we can say that according to that point of time, the way it was there in India, we can consider that he was from a upper middle class family or a upper class family. He studied law in England, and then Gandhiji in 1893 went to South Africa. Remember the date, 1869 he was born. In 1893, he went to South Africa. Why? In connection with a case involving his client, Dada Abdullah. So he was there to work for his client. But after solving his matter and getting things resolved, he decided to stay in South Africa because he saw many problematic situations around him. So in South Africa, he witnessed the ugly face of white racism. He understood that Europeans somehow dominated the entire society and are discriminating against the blacks. And the humiliation and contempt to the Asians, in which many of the Indians were there, who had gone to South Africa as laborers. So they were subjected, they were somehow suppressed, and a lot of restrictions were imposed on these Asian laborers. Now, many Indians also went there in South Africa. So, a way of migration was always there. Few of the laborers they migrated, and when they migrated, they used to have a contract. So, sometimes they were indentured laborers. Indentured laborers means when they had a contract of 10 years or 20 years. But we had many ex indentured laborers also, means the laborers who after completing their contract, after the time limit of contract was ended, still started working there only and stayed there in the South Africa for work. Now if we start with the moderate phase of the struggle, understand that Gandhiji, he used to follow things step by step. So he started with prayer, petition and plead. If you remember Congress in the moderate phase, so, how leaders used to do? They used to only have prayer, petition, and plead in their mind. So, Gandhiji also followed the same initially from 1894 to 1906. During this phase, Gandhi relied on sending petitions and memorials to the authorities in South Africa and and in Britain. So, to unite different sections of Indians, he set up the Natal Indian Congress and started a paper, Indian Opinion. Okay, paper was Indian Opinion. So, to unite different sections of Indians, he set up the Natal Indian Congress. Now, the Natal Indian Congress and the paper Indian Opinion is very, very important. Why? Because he wanted to unite the different sections of Indians. He wanted everyone to come together, and then he used to understand the demands. He used to put it in a petition and file it. By sending these letters to the authorities in South Africa and in Britain, he wanted government to listen. But government was not responding well. Britishers, as you know, that they were exploitative in their nature. They took it very lightly and they never responded on the same. After getting no clear response from the government, Gandhiji started his passive resistance or satyagrah. So, from 1906 to 1914, he started the passive resistance. Now, look at the date. Can you see 1894 to 1906? If you remember, 1905 was the date of the Bengal partition, after which the extremist phase started with the Congress in India also. So we start the extremist phase and the rise of revolutionary tendencies from 1906 in India in a very active way. So here you can also relate the same, that dates are very similar, 1905, 1906. Okay, try to relate it like that. So the second phase began. It began in 1906 and it was characterized by the use of method of passive resistance. Passive resistance means what? When you have a resistance against the government, you are not breaking the law, but you are just protesting in a very non-violent way, where the government will not consider that things are going against the law or if someone is breaking the law, but it's a very peaceful way of protesting and showing the anger. So he started his civil disobedience, means I don't support the government, but I'll not obey the government. Okay, here it is clear that I am not breaking the laws, but I will not follow it also. If I'll break the law, then government can arrest me, they can punish me. But if I don't follow the law at all, then government cannot do anything. तो सिविल डिसोबीडियंस, सविनय अवज्ञा आंदोलन, आज्ञा की एक तरह से आज्ञा को ना मानना, आज्ञा का पालन ना करना, ठीक है, तो सविनय अवज्ञा, सिविल डिसोबीडियंस, विच गांधी नेम्ड सत्याग्रह, सत्य का आग्रह, सत्य की आशा करना, सत्य के लिए लड़ना. So it was a fight for his truth. He understood that I am a true Indian and I am working against the racism, against the racial discrimination. So Satyagraha against registration certificate he started in 1906. What was a registration certificate? It was a certificate or a I card. If you have seen school I cards or office I cards, what people do, they always hang it in their neck. So the I card is always hanging so that it is good to identify them. It would be easy that what is the name of person, in which department he or she is working. So Indians and blacks were asked to make their I cards like this. It was a registration certificate and they had to keep it every time with them, so that it would be easily, recognized by the Europeans that the person is an Indian or an Asian, and why the person is here, what kind of treatment they can do, or you can say mistreatment they can do against the person. So a new legislation in South Africa was there. It made it compulsory for all the Indians that they should carry their certificates of registration with their fingerprints. It was just to clearly do the discrimination against them. Now, Indians under Gandhi's leadership decided not to submit to this discriminatory measure. Gandhiji formed Passive Resistance Association to conduct the campaign of defying the law and suffering all the penalties resulting from such a defiance. So they all, gathered together, they burnt all the registration certificates and they showed their anger that this is not right and not lawful, that Britishers or the government in the South Africa, Europeans are asking it. So Indians under the leadership of Gandhiji, they retaliated, they burned the registration certificates, and this public burning gave South African government a very bad light. All this showed the South African government in a bad light, and in the end there was a compromised settlement, and people were extremely happy after getting their laws customized according to their own will. There was one more campaign which was against the restriction on Indian migrations. Basically, people had restricted movements in South Africa. So the earlier campaign was widened to include protest against a new legislation imposing restrictions on Indian migration. Indians defied this law by crossing over from one province to another and by refusing to produce licenses. Okay, and many of these Indians were jailed also at that time, but later government understood that people should, have a good kind of permission, that if they want to go and, if they want to move here and there, so there should be no immigration problem to them. A Transvaal Immigration Act was there, against which Gandhiji was fighting. There was a campaign against the poll tax also and invalidation of Indian marriages. Poll tax is like a tax which was there. If you see in your society, you have security guards, right? So if government is saying that, okay, for police and government you are paying the tax, but for these securities and other purposes, to maintain these securities, you need to pay more tax. That is a poll tax for the security guards. People were saying that we are already having no money with such a less salary, it's not possible for us to pay the high amount of poll taxes. That's why people were against the poll tax. And invalidation of Indian marriages, why? Because government said that if you are not married according to the Christian customs, and if the marriage is not registered, then it would be cancelled or it would be considered invalid, and children coming from that marriage were also unlawful or invalid somehow in the eyes of the government. So Indians were unhappy that, Indians, Hindus, and Muslims, women especially, it was against the dignity of women. They were extremely angry after understanding this act. They were like, we got married in a temple, or maybe by, Maulvi, with our own customs. Sometimes it happens that the marriage is not registered, but we are also having kids. So those children are not valid. How could you say that? How could government just declare and cancel the things for people like that? So that's why people started protesting. A poll tax of £3 was imposed on all ex-indentured Indians. Ex-indentured means whose contracts were expired. Okay, ex-indentured, no more contract, no more valid contract. So the demand for the abolition of poll tax was there, which was too much for the poor ex-indentured Indians who earned less than 10 shillings. They were not earning well, so they could not pay £3, okay, per month. So it widened the base of the campaign. Then a Supreme Court order was there which invalidated all the marriages not conducted according to the Christian rites and registered by the registrar of marriage, due to the anger of the Indians and other who were not Christians and who did not register their marriage. That's why. There was a protest against the Transvaal Immigration Act. Indians protested against the Transvaal Immigration Act by illegally migrating from Natal into Transvaal. Okay, so they were not allowed to migrate and go in the Transvaal area, but they did it. So the government held these Indians in jails. Miners and plantation workers went on lightning strike. By these strikes, government had a lot of pressure. In India, Gokhale toured the whole country, mobilizing public opinion in support of Indians in South Africa. Even the Viceroy Lord Hardinge condemned the repression and called for an impartial inquiry. So here you can see that how many of the Europeans and Indians started seeing Mahatma Gandhi as a very strong person and a leader who could, really move the government by his lawful and peaceful nature. So, with peace, with good, empathy, and a kind of a non-violent strategy, Gandhiji got a lot of victories and a lot of solutions came, compromises came, and he led to a good settlement between the people and the government. And that's why he became very famous at international level. Before coming to India, he was already an international leader. Eventually, through a series of negotiations involving Gandhiji, Lord Harding, C.F. Andrews, General Smuts, these leaders, there was an arrangement. It reached by which the government of South Africa conceded the major Indian demands relating to the poll tax, registration certificates, marriage, solemnizing according to the Indian rights, and promised to treat the issue of Indian immigration in a very sympathetic manner. So, this sympathy, this real time, you know, commitment came with the Gandhiji and his works in South Africa. After doing all these things, he came to India. So when he came, he first decided to just sit and watch things. So he just wanted to tour India. He decided that for 1 year he will not involve in the active politics. He just wanted to check the ground reality. He just wanted to visit to different places and villages in India. So he decided not to participate in anything. And for 1 year he just spent time touring India in different parts of the country and going and meeting people. So to understand the real ground reality, and by meeting and discussing things with people, he understood the real nature, and then he started his active politics. He started his active journey in the movement by Champaran, Khedha, and Ahmedabad Satyagrah, which we will discuss. Okay, so Gandhiji in India is the topic which we need to cover now. Okay, let me just check how is it going. Fine. So, Gandhiji in India, Gandhiji returned to India in January 1915, and his efforts in South Africa were well known not only among the educated but also among the masses. Here, you need to understand that many of the educated Indians who used to think that Europeans are good, Britishers can modernize India, and Britishers could bring more scientific and technical development to India, they also understood the true nature of Britishers now, and somehow they had a good connection with Gandhiji. See, when people are educated, they feel like a person who is an international leader, a lawful person, a person who knows the laws and documentation, who himself is educated. They are more relatable with the person now. And masses, poor people, farmers, everyone, they feel a connection with Gandhiji. Why? Because Gandhiji was a great listener. He used to listen to everyone. He tried to understand the real problems. He tried to make a clear solution oriented discussion. And whenever he used to sit on the table with the government, he had his own clear communications. And the way of communication was very, very nice because of his attitude and behavior, which is a very, you can say, a very nice behavior, a very homely behavior which he had. So the aura was very, very strong. And when he went in, in front of masses in public, he never used to behave like a person who is coming from England after being an international leader coming to India now. No, if nowadays, if you see how people behave once they go outside India and if they visit to any other country, or if they come to India back to their home, or if they are NRIs, how they behave sometimes, how they do things. They consider themselves as kings and queens. They behave in a very different way, and they try to belittle people and show off things in a very bad attitude. So Gandhiji was not like that. Okay, so because of his down to earth approach, down to earth behavior, because of his nature, down to earth nature, he was able to connect with masses, and he decided to tour country the next 1 year and see for himself the condition of masses. He also decided not to take any position in any political matter for at least 1 year. Why? Just to spend time with the Indians and know the country well, because he came back after a long time. So that's why he just wanted to understand the contemporary scenario, and plan things accordingly. And that's why we say that it is very important to plan. Okay, failing to plan is planning to fail. So you should always plan something and then take your steps. So Gandhiji wanted to make a good plan and he started his planning. So now from the next class we will see that what kind of plan he made, what plannings and achievements were there with Gandhiji in India. So from here we will discuss things in the next class. I hope you liked the session. In case there is any doubt, in case there is any confusion, there is the comment section open for you, and I'm always there to discuss things with you. I'll come back again tomorrow live. See you then. Take care. Bye bye.